I spent 100 days building up my very own colony. We went from humble beginnings and devastating losses to eventually having our very own thriving settlement with no competition to stand against us. Now, if you go on to enjoy this video at any point, then please consider dropping a like and subscribing. Also, be sure to let me know what video you want to see next down in the comments. But now, without any further ado, let's get into it. So, starting things out on day 1, all I had were a couple of bucks and a big dream. So I immediately got to work on beating up a few trees for some wood before grabbing some cobblestone and crafting up a full set of stone tools. Once the tools were acquired, I set out in search of a suitable place to begin the colony/settlement. When I stumbled across some lone survivors out here, however they really didn't have anything but a campfire, so I just continued on, getting jumped by some silverfish from this what I thought was gravel, but it wasn't, and I did not get any hidden loot, just a bug bite. Shortly after, I had a quick stare down with a bear and decided that I would not win that fight, so instead I took to a nearby lake and stocked up on some fish that I tried to cook on the survivor's campfire, but I guess these fish are fire resistant or something because you can't cook them, they won't cook. So after chomping down on my raw fish, I found a herd of bison and well, they looked pretty delectable to me, so I pillared up a few blocks and took one down the cheap way, getting myself some bison meat. A little exploring later and I found a nice open area that could work pretty well for our settlement. So I said hello to a couple of the locals, grabbed a little bit more wood and set up camp in a small cave for the night to cook up my bison meat, as well as check out this small cave area nearby that had a small amount of iron in it. Waking up on day 2, I crafted myself an iron pick and an axe and then began making my way towards what looked like a nearby village. Because if I did want to set up camp here, I needed to get a lay of the land and see how well the competition are doing. And I mean, they were doing alright. I mean, emphasis on were, although they didn't really have much in the first place, they had a whole lot less once I was done. I tore this place apart, stealing all of their hay, messing up their farms, just to send a message that there's a new kid on the block and I ain't taking prisoners? That doesn't really work, but moving on. After pillaging the nearby village, I said hello to a pig and set up camp right next door to said village and got to work on officially setting up our colony by placing down a town hall block and a builder's hut block. And then within seconds of me placing down those blocks, we had our very first villagers show up, who were then immediately put to work on building up the builder's hut. However, before work could actually properly begin, I needed quite a few materials. So I dug out a new hidey hole for myself, getting a little iron in the process, and crafted up some new stone tools for the builders before heading to bed. After leaving my little hidey hole on day 3, I noticed that we'd already amassed a crowd of so many villagers just begging to be involved in the building of this exquisite town/settlement/colony, whatever you want to call it. But they were gonna have to wait because for now we only needed our singular builder. So after giving him some pork chops, I decided to craft up and place down some farm blueprint blocks before getting back to work on setting up our builder's hut. Now, for some reason, our builder decided that he wanted a golden shovel for some reason, which made me debate the decision of hiring this guy because, I mean, what? What even is that? Why would you want that? Anyways, he got a wooden shovel instead and finally started to get to work. Now that he was going, I broke down all the hay bales into wheat and crafted it all into bread, that I then gave out to all the villagers so that they don't starve straight off the bat. I don't think that'd be a good look. Once they were all fed, I decided to give our builder a hand, and well, I don't know if I was helping or hurting the process at this point because I had no clue what this guy was trying to do. He was just removing dirt to replace it with more dirt, and I don't know. This guy's cognitive abilities are very questionable, but I just decided to leave him to it. And instead of helping him, I headed over to a nearby forest to stack up on some of the wood that I needed for the actual building. After getting the wood, I crafted it into the required items and grabbed some dirt as well because he also needed some of that. Once said dirt was acquired, I threw it into the building menu, gave another pig a warm welcome, crafted a shield, and headed to bed. The rain was still pouring when I awoke on day 4, so I decided to spend a little while mining. Almost immediately, I found a massive cave just under my little hidey hole, so I slowly made my way through it, clearing out any mobs in my way and lighting it up as much as I could, as well as mining up any iron or coal I found along the way. However, my time down here in the caves was cut pretty short because I got the notification that the builder's hut had been completed and I was advised to start work on a tavern. So I headed back up top and crafted the tavern building block and placed it down next to the builder's hut. However, this is going to take a lot more materials, so we'll come back to that soon, because I also placed down a mine that needs significantly less materials to get up and running. And my whole plan with this is the fact that the mine will probably help us get some ores and materials passively whilst we're working on other things in the settlement. I'm sure that I make complete use of this later and don't forget about it and leave my miner just kind of idle and unemployed, but more on that later. Now, I already had quite a few of the materials needed for the mine, so I just threw them into the table so that our buildy boy can get to work as soon as possible, and then headed back down into the caves. But yet again, my time in the caves was cut very short because an absolute tragedy occurred. You see, in the time I was down here, it got dark, and I got the lovely notification that one of our villagers had indeed been oofed. Now, still to this day, I don't know really who it is. As of reading the script, I'll probably see it when I go back and edit the video, but at the time, I thought it was my builder, so I immediately ran back up to my hidey hole and took a quick nap. And then in the morning, I hopped up to the surface to deal with the invaders. Once the zombies were gone, I grabbed the loot from the no longer existing villager and gave it to a different one, who I immediately put to work in place of them. Now, it also seems like all of the other villagers around here were about as upset as I was about the loss of our previous builder, because they just really didn't seem to care. And almost immediately, the mine was finished and I hired our very first miner, who I kitted out with some stone tools before telling our new builder to get to work on the tavern, because he has to earn his breaks around here. Also, I guess this kind of takes back what I said yesterday about not knowing if it was the builder, because I wrote in the script that it was, so I don't know. I think it was the builder. Moving on. Now, for the tavern to actually start getting built, it needed some materials, so I headed back out to the forest to get some wood, where I got into a brawl with a bear, but he decided that he didn't even want to try to climb 2 blocks of wood and just accepted his fate. I swear that bears are supposed to, climb trees. I know that, a species that doesn't. Maybe it was that species. I don't know. I don't know about bears, man. I'm not a bear expert, man. No, not my expertise. Anyways, bear discussion aside, after spending a good portion of the day out in the forest chopping wood, I headed back to the settlement and got to work on crafting up some of the wooden materials needed for the tavern, and getting almost everything I needed for it, excluding 11 black carpets, 14 glass, and 4 beds, as well as a few oak stairs. So, all in all, I think day 5 was a pretty productive day, even if we did lose a villager. Day 6, I immediately headed back over to our lovely neighbors to borrow some sugar. Now, by sugar, I mean white beds, and by borrow, I mean steal to never return it and use on my own tavern. Now, whilst I was in the village, I also decided to grab up some wood from around their farms for whatever reason, as well as grabbing some sand from down by the water before heading back to the settlement to hand in the materials and cook up the sand into glass, where I then quickly found out that I am now malnourished, so that's nice. My lack of self-care aside, I headed out in search of some sheep so that I can actually get the carpets I needed. Now, whilst hunting the sheep, I found a lone house in a nearby forest that had a couple of people living in it, but the chests didn't have any loot, so they get a pass from my pillaging for now. After a little while of searching for sheep and only getting pigs, I decided to head back home, finding a chest in the village that had an enchanted iron hoe inside of it. So I yoinked it and made my way over to a nearby swampy area to take out some squids for some black dye. However, after carelessly throwing myself into the water, I came face to face with a crocodile that began chasing me. So I channeled my inner Steve Irwin and juked it out so that I could grab my ink sacs in peace. In the morning, I headed back out to find some sheep when I noticed that the lone survivors from earlier were evolving by building a little hut. Oh, I tell you, they have some nerve building this close to my settlement without paying me taxes. I'll have to come back here later and teach them a thing or two. But for now, I have bigger fish to fry. And by fish, I mean sheep, and by fry, I mean give a haircut. Yes, I used the same joke twice in a row, and there's nothing you can do about it. Anyways, after a few minutes of searching, I actually ended up finding a couple of sheep that I trimmed up a few times before heading back home with all the wool I needed. Once I got back, I crafted up some ladders for the miner so that he can actually, start mining, and quickly ran to the tavern to sleep because there were already mobs all over the place and I didn't want to lose another villager. Well, I did manage to get to sleep last night, but we still lost another villager, and when I went to check on the grave, I almost needed one for myself because I got bonked up real good by all the mobs around here. After clearing up the rabble, I checked the grave to find that I don't think it was anyone important, so we're chilling. Now, following that entire mess, I decided to spend some time back down in the caves, getting into yet another fight with a literal army, and once again almost dying down to getting bonked way too much. But I locked in and pillared up to take them out the cheap way. It works, and I'm gonna keep doing it. Now, I also ended up getting the notification that the tavern was now fully built, so maybe now my villagers will actually stand a chance at surviving the night if I don't sleep immediately the second it gets dark. After exploring deeper into the caves and grabbing up any iron I saw along the way and putting down an undead miner who ended up dropping me a singular chunk of raw gold, I headed back to the surface to check up on the tavern. Now, it looks very basic, but it'll get the job done and we will be upgrading it later, but for now, I made my miner a new shovel and started work on upgrading the builder's hut to level 2 because it really didn't need too much stuff. Then later that evening, I crafted my first 2 pieces of iron armor so I won't be so squishy to everything around me anymore. Day 9 was a pretty miserable day. It was grey and it was raining, but we still got a lot of work ahead of us. So I was straight back to work in the forests grabbing some more oak wood before checking the map to see a nearby snowy biome area thingy that I thought could have some spruce trees in it, because I needed like 2 spruce logs for the builder's hut upgrade. I don't know why it's only 2, but it wants them. So I headed over there, trimming another sheep along the way, and once I arrived, I saw those beautiful tall spruce trees and tore down a couple of them. Now, whilst I was making my way back home, I found this birch shack thing with another couple people living in it, and I also needed birch wood for the upgrades, as a matter of fact. So instead of chopping any of the nearby trees, I just took it from their house and then went back to the settlement to hand everything in, as well as crafting up 2 more pieces of iron armor. After possibly eating a little bit too much food and engorging myself, I headed over to check on the mine to find that my miner wanted some of this framed cobblestone for some reason. Now, I'm going to tell you in a minute how much I hate this block, and you'll see why later, but for now, I made an architect's cutter and crafted up some of it, but be warned, this block is the spawn of Satan. In the morning, I set the mine to begin upgrading and gave the miner some cobblestone, but it wasn't the exact one he wanted, so I had to go and craft up some more correct ones this time. After dealing with that, I decided that I should start a little farm to get some food growing, because I remembered that I actually have to feed these people, or at least the ones I have working for me. So I put my enchanted hoe to use by making a little farm area down by the river. But then, while I was heading back to grab the seeds, I noticed that my miner had stopped working again. So I went over to check on the problem. And it turns out that he wanted an absolutely obscene amount of this framed cobblestone. He wants just 1 to 730, that's, no problem, man. Just give me like 5 years to get that for you, along with all the other stuff you want. Needless to say, I did not give him the stuff he needed and instead headed back to the farm and planted down all the seeds I had, before returning back to the mine and relieving the miner of his duties down to him having unreal expectations, and just hired someone new instead. Once I left the mine, I ended up finding a wandering trader that didn't really have anything useful to me right now, but I let him stick around anyway. Then, later that evening, I decided to craft a backpack because I was planning on spending a while down the mines tomorrow, so I could definitely use the extra space. And so on day 11, I headed back down the mines to stock up on any and all resources, mainly consisting of iron, gold, and coal. However, I did find a few diamonds while I was down here, so that was a nice little bonus. Oh yeah, as well as a giant centipede demon from the 9th circle of hell just chilling down here in a cave. Now, call me what you want, but there is no amount of money you could pay me to even think about going near that thing, let alone fight it right now. So I did the smart thing, surprisingly, and ran the opposite way. However, my journey down the hellish rabbit hole was far, far from over. Because not too long after the encounter with our very aptly legged friend, I found myself in these webbed caves with spider eggs and webs everywhere, along with quite a few actual spiders to boot. I guess things down here weren't that bad though, because I did end up finding a mob spawner. However, it was a zombie spawner and the loot wasn't really that great, so I guess things were that bad? After a while longer of traversing through these web-ridden caves, I got chased down by this absolute unit of a zombie who had a whole bunch of status effects on him, but he was no match for the almighty 3-block tall pillar, and I took him down without an incident, getting this warrior chestplate for my troubles. Now, I think the game wanted to take it easy on me after all of the trauma that these caves have put me through, and gave me this little guy, a goblin trader that essentially allowed me to dupe up a whole bunch of my ores, so we love this guy. Big ups to this guy. What a goat, man. This guy, I love this guy. I love these little traders. I love them. But then, in the very next system of caves I entered, I got jumped by a whole bunch of ghouls that ended up dropping me all the way down to 1 heart. But I did what I do best and ran for my life, getting away from them and having time to heal back up. Now finally, after encountering a huge horde of zombies out of nowhere, I decided that I was done in the caves for now and began making my way back to the surface because they clearly didn't want me down there. Once I arrived back home on the morning of day 14, I used the diamonds that I found whilst down in my hellish expedition in the caves to craft up a pickaxe. Now I don't know why I did this, but I ended up taking a quick trip over to the rival village, but I literally did nothing whilst over there. I really don't know why I went. After wasting some time in the village, I returned to the settlement to notice that we were under attack by a group of pillagers that I ended up baiting into shooting each other before cleaning up the last ones myself and getting probably the best reward I've ever gotten. A little fox hat. Look at this thing. Look at it. You can't tell me it's not the best thing in the game. And if you do, you're just wrong. You have no taste, all right? Foxes are the best thing, okay? They just are. Anyways, moving on. I decided to venture out for a while to see if there was anything interesting or useful nearby. Immediately finding another little settlement kind of house thing with some villages in it, as well as an anvil that somehow just randomly ended up in my backpack before leaving. Yeah, it's a very strange case right there. After getting away with my theft, I stumbled across some kind of ancient broken down ruins just out in the middle of nowhere, and I have no clue what these things are, but they did have a couple of chests with some okay loot in them, so I'll take it and I'm not going to complain. Now, other than the chests at the ruins, I really didn't find anything else while out exploring other than a little lava pool that I just used to get some obsidian, and then spent the night just in another lone house out in the middle of nowhere. After spending the night squatting in someone else's house, I decided to take the scenic route back home on day 15, finding yet another lone house that I used to acquire some hay bales and bugs before continuing on. Now, I think the only other notable things that happened on my way back home were me finding some of these berry bush things and grabbing some saplings from a nearby dark oak forest. It was quite the boring journey back home. Once I arrived back at the colony, I sorted through what little loot I'd gathered whilst exploring and crafted up an enchantment table along with a few bookshelves and just threw it down behind my little camp area. Then I placed down a farm hut block and started work on the building before making even more bookshelves and attempting to enchant my pickaxe. Now, I already see the comments, alright? I know how the system works now, but at the time I had no clue what I was doing, so cut me some slack. I don't even know why I say this though, because you guys are always so nice in the comments, and if I don't understand something, you'll be super chill and explain it to me, so thank you. You know, you guys are super chill and I love you. Anyways, after playing a really scuffed version of Tetris, I headed to bed. In the morning, I headed over to the builder's hut and began crafting up and storing away all of the materials required to get the farm building completed. Once that was done, I returned to my calling in life and headed over to the forest to continue my career as a lumberjack to stack up on some wood. And after getting a few stacks, I headed back to my little camp and threw down a few chests to begin sorting through all of my stuff, because things were getting a bit out of hand with how messy everything was. A few minutes later, I got the notification that the farmer's hut was now completed, so I headed over there and immediately began work on the first upgrade for it because I already had everything that was needed. And once I did that, I got straight back to sorting out my storage. Day 18, I was straight back down in the caves in hopes of grabbing a few more diamonds, grabbing pretty much yet again any ores I saw along the way before eventually finding a couple and smashing up a few urns/vases. I don't remember what they were called, but they didn't have much in them. Then I got slightly jump scared by this monster box right here because I didn't notice it immediately and really didn't want this thing to go off, and it took like 20 years to break. Luckily though, I managed to destroy it before anything happened. After going through the caves a little bit more, I found another goblin trader who once again generously allowed me to dupe up some of my ores, but other than our little goblin friend, I found a couple more diamonds and just headed back up home. So, with all of the gold that I managed to acquire down in the caves yesterday, I was able to craft up 6 gapples, and it would have been more, but I didn't actually have any normal apples left, so it wasn't down to a lack of gold. Anyways, I decided to craft up a lectern, and you already know what that means. Yep, I ran straight back over to the rival village and convinced someone to be my librarian. Then I headed back to camp and crafted up a blast furnace and a fletching table before returning to the village and doing the exact same thing with another 2 villagers. But this time, they would be my brand new dedicated stick trader and armorer forever. Once they were all set up, well, kinda set up, it's a bit janky, but they can't escape, so it works. I spent the rest of the day trading sticks and leveling up my armorer. Day 20 started out pretty miserable. It was grey and raining again, but after crafting up a diamond axe, things immediately cleared up and I pretty much spent the entire day out in the forest chopping trees, and that night I did do a little bit of stick trading. Followed by more trading in the morning to get some emeralds and level up the armorer some more, before heading back to the colony and into the tavern to start the process of upgrading it, because I was getting really sick of the blocky wooden look it has at the minute. Once the upgrade was started, I stored some stuff away, crafted up a diamond shovel, and enchanted it, still not knowing how in the hell this thing worked. And then I headed out in search of some clay because I needed it for the roofing of the tavern upgrade. Now, I don't know if it's just me or if clay is like rarer in this pack, but it just seemed like there was less of it than usual, and it wasn't impossible to find, but there was a lot less spawns of it, and a lot of the veins were significantly smaller, so I don't know, maybe I'm just in a bad area, but it seemed like there was less clay than usual. Anyways, after stacking up on clay, I returned to camp and began cooking it up into bricks. But then my stupidity eventually caught up with me, I wondered when that would happen, and I ended up crafting some into the completely wrong kind of bricks. Now, I didn't know there were multiple kinds in this pack, but there is, and luckily I noticed almost straight away and made them into the correct ones after. In the morning, I made my way back over to the spruce forest to get more wood. Along the way, I ran past the survivors from earlier again, and they're progressing really slowly, so I really don't think that they're going to pose any threat to me or my colony or my citizens anytime soon. Once I got to the forest, I chopped down a bunch of trees, as well as growing and chopping down a super mega giga tree. Then headed back to the settlement and handed in more of the materials for the tavern upgrade. Also, I'd like to point out that my in-game diet has improved, because I'm eating like a bunch of different stuff now and actively trying not to lose hearts constantly. Just thought I'd add that little trivia in there, you know, I'm working on the in-game diet, okay, it's going well. Anyway, I crafted some more gapples and bricks and then spent the evening doing some more trading over at the village, getting our very first piece of diamond armor. Alright, day 23. It was quite a trade-heavy day, but we did start out by placing down a field so that our farmer can actually start working. Well, he would start working if I'd actually done it properly. You see, you need to actually place a seed in the middle of this little menu right here so that they can start planting things down, and I didn't do that because I'm a fool. So the farmer will now just be sitting idle until I fix it later on. After thinking that I got the farmer to work, I crafted a grindstone and went over to the village, securing another worker for me, but this time as a toolsmith because I really wanted a good shovel from them. So I set them up next to a house and got back to the good old-fashioned stick trading to level them up. And well, I got them maxed out the same day, but unfortunately I got an axe and a sword trade and no shovel. However, I did decide to buy the sword because it had sharpness 2 on it and I had enough emeralds, so I thought it'd be worth the tiny little upgrade that it was. Now, I was so desperate to get a good shovel that I ended up crafting another grindstone and changing the librarian into a toolsmith, but didn't start leveling them up right now because I really didn't have the emeralds. So instead, I just headed back to the colony and combined my 2 axes in an anvil to get a slightly upgraded one. In the morning, I was back down in the caves, but this time for andesite because I needed a whole bunch of it to start building up the town hall. Now, let me tell you, getting this andesite right here would set into motion a very, very annoying and unfortunate series of events that would come back to haunt me big time later on. Anyways, after getting a chunk of andesite, I returned back up and crafted it into some polished andesite and some stairs before just throwing it in a chest to use later. After that, I made some bone meal and farmed out a few potatoes and carrots because I was running pretty low on veggies and I really want to try and keep the diet somewhat okay. After I got the potatoes cooking, I headed over to the farm hut to see how progress was going and, well, because of my stupidity earlier, there was no progress. But the farmer wasn't here to tell me that, so I would still remain oblivious for a little longer. So after still being none the wiser to my mistake with the farmer earlier, I returned to the caves again, but this time to stack up on some diorite. Oh, and later that night, my miner died randomly, so that's fun. He wasn't really doing much anyways, so I'm not too torn up about it. Yet another miserable and rainy day awaited me on the morning of day 25. I swear this seed is absolutely cursed with rain, but it's also kinda chill at the same time. Anyway, I crafted a forester's hut so that I can get some help gathering wood passively. And once it was crafted, I threw it down near the miner's hut and started work on building it up. Later in the day, the weather had cleared up, so I decided to take a nice little stroll over to the village and do some more trading, before then gathering up a bunch of seeds from grass and making a second farm right underneath the tavern. I don't know, man. Don't ask why I made this farm. I have no clue why I made it at all. I don't know. I don't know what I do sometimes, and this is one of those times. Why am I making a farm under here? I headed straight back over to the village at dawn to get some more trades done, making some very minor progress in leveling up the new toolsmith. After that, I decided to do some landscaping around the builder's hut before getting the notification that the forester's hut was now up and running. So I ran over there and kitted out our brand new lumberjack. You know, I actually don't know if he's technically a forester or if he's a lumberjack or if they're the same thing. I don't know, I don't care. He's here and he will cut trees for me. Once he was set up, I started on the building of the town hall, and now I will explain to you why the andesite from earlier had such a big impact. You see, what do you notice in all of these buildings right here? Or maybe, what don't you notice? I'll give you a second to think. Now, if you guessed andesite, you would be completely correct, because these buildings were built using the Mine Colony's blueprint in the building menu. That is the theme that I decided to go with for my actual colony, and it's also the default theme for the colonies as a whole. Now, I'm pretty sure you might know where I'm going with this, because none of the buildings in this pack follow the theme of using andesite as their main block. However, my town hall does. And it just so happens that my town hall was set to the completely wrong pack that I did not notice for way too long. And you might be thinking to yourself, well, Poppers, how bad could that actually be? You know, it'll look slightly different, you know, it'll still look good. Well, yeah, it might do, but, well, the pack that I had it set to has an absolutely massive town hall. Way bigger than the one from Mine Colonies, and it also looks so vastly different to all the other buildings. Therefore, it'll take up a lot more space, and it'll take a whole bunch longer to build, and it'll look completely out of place. So yeah, that's the issue that I didn't even know that I had at this point in time, so I just started working on the completely wrong town hall. Whew. Anyways, town hall ran over. Later that day, it started raining again, and my builder died, and then I got attacked by a zombie while trying to go to bed. I guess there were signs of bad things coming, but I just didn't pay attention. Okay, I'll keep this one short. Day 27 was literally spent with me helping the new builder clear out some of the massive area for the town hall. And later that day, I also headed back down into the caves to grab more andesite. Now, I'm going to keep these days where I'm working on the town hall shorter because it literally means nothing because I need to replace it. In the morning, I loaded up on food and decided to head out exploring for a while, taking out any pig, sheep, or cow I saw along the way, because I have quite a few mouths to feed at this point, and I can barely keep myself on a good diet, let alone an entire village. Now, after a little while of running, I ended up stumbling across a group of Shebas. However, I didn't have any bones on me, so I just dropped down a waypoint on the map to remind me to come back here and tame a few later. After leaving the Shebs, a couple more sheep got to know my axe real closely, and I found another survivor hut, but all it had to offer me were a couple of bookshelves. But then later that day, I ended up stumbling across a fir tree forest, and I was extremely happy about this because look at these things! They are huge, and they will help me out greatly with stick trades. so I made sure that I picked up a few saplings. Before then finding just some normal Minecraft dogs out here in the forest, and right next to them, a little ruined structure with some bones in it. So I immediately did a 180 and tamed 3 of them. However, my happiness was very short-lived, because after bonking a couple of sheep, this bear came right out of nowhere and gobbled up 2 of my dogs. I don't even know where this guy came from, man! This is literally why I never get dogs anymore, alright? If you don't leave them at home sat in a box, alright, they'll end up stranded out in the middle of the ocean, never to be seen again, like in my first 100 days video, or getting eaten by a bear. This is a curse that I cannot break. My dogs always get lost or die. It's cursed. Anyways, after running away from the bear, I set up camp for the night and began heading back home in the morning, once again taking the scenic route back. Also, I just want to point out right here, I absolutely hate running through these shrubbery biomes. It's just so annoying, because if you go fast through them, you keep falling into little holes while jumping, and it just makes it annoying. And then on top of it, whilst I was going through this biome, my game crashed. It crashed my game. I hate this biome. And then on top of that, once I reloaded my game, my dog was gone. My final dog was gone. It literally just disappeared. I have no clue what happened to it. I even looked around for a while, but yeah, no, he's gone. So now I have no dogs. That has to be a world record of losing dogs. I'm telling you. What, you can't make this up. Where did he go? So with that absolute tragedy just happening, I made my way back home, and I found another abandoned colony right next door to my own, and I stole their guard tower and restaurant before then going home. After a good night's sleep, on day 30 I stored away all the stuff I gathered during my tragic adventure and also placed down the guard tower block. Before then doing some more trading over at the village, still not getting the shovel that I wanted. So I finally decided that enough is enough, I'll make my own shovel, so I decked out the enchantment table with as many books as I could, and after a quick Google search after messing up for way longer than I care to admit, I finally figured out how this whole Tetris enchanting system works, and I'm not gonna lie, now that I understand it, I really like this version of enchanting. It's kind of fun, and I much prefer it to like vanilla enchanting. It's pretty fun, I like it. Anyways, once my shovel was stacked up on enchants, I spent the rest of the day helping out the builder clear out the massive pointless space for my massive pointless town hall. Followed by day 31 being literally the exact same thing, except I didn't do any enchanting, I just dug up dirt pretty much all day, only ever stopping to repair my shovel. Alright, day 32, it was an odd one. I spent most of the day yet again helping out the builder clear out the area for the town hall, but then decided to take a quick break and enchanted an iron pick because my diamond one was looking pretty rough and I really didn't want to break it. Now, with my new pickaxe acquired, I returned to the caves in search of coal when I found out that there was an overgrown mineshaft literally right underneath me this entire time. So I explored it a little before once again having my time cut short down in the caves by yet another builder dying. I am indeed a terrible leader, but they should really just go to bed. I don't know why they don't. There is a literal tavern built. They can sleep, but they just don't. So I headed back up to the surface in the morning and looted the builder's grave to recover his very precious materials, and then put the coal that I gathered yesterday to use, crafting it into some blocks, and eventually 2 diamonds. Yeah, you can literally turn coal into diamonds in this mod pack. I mean, it makes sense, but it still feels a little bit scummy. Anyways, after re-enchanting and repairing my diamond pick, I helped out the new builder for a while before heading over to the village and buying another piece of diamond armor, and then spent the rest of the night down in the caves grabbing even more materials for this cursed town hall. Now, you'll never guess what I did for most of day 34. Yep, that's right, I helped out with work on the town hall. Oh, and by the way, if it wasn't obvious, I still had no clue that this was the wrong town hall. Anyways, I did also get the last 2 pieces of diamond armor, but other than that, the day was literally spent with me placing down dirt. In the morning, I helped out the builder a little more, but then headed back down into the caves to explore the mineshaft. Now, I'm going to be real with you, there really wasn't much to find down here except a bedroom kind of thing with a spawner in it and a chest with a gapple as well as some coal, but this place was literally void of any other loot as well as being an absolute hellscape to traverse. Because I mean, just look at this, look how many vines and leaves are literally everywhere, man, I can't even move. Now, the lack of loot down here actually really did take me by surprise though, because these mineshafts, or at least this type of the mineshaft, usually have pretty decent loot, but apparently not this one. Then, just as I was about to call it a day and head back up home, I noticed that my forester lumberjack thingy guy had made their way down here for whatever reason. I mean, there is a lot of wood, but There are literally trees right next to the hut, so I have no clue why they were down here, but I was extremely shocked to see them. So I left our village down there and headed back to camp to craft up a couple more diamonds, followed by me helping out the builder some more with the town hall, but we're gonna skip over that and get straight to me heading back over to the Sheba spot and getting myself 2 more dogs that I immediately took back to the settlement and named Pepto and Binks. Now let's just hope that a bear doesn't decide to stroll on by and gobble them up. I started recording a little late on day 37, but it was a pretty boring day anyway, so you didn't really miss much. I pretty much just spent way too long trying to set up a quarrier guy, but it didn't work out. It was, I don't know, I couldn't figure it out. Day 38 started out with me beating on old Muriel right here, and our forester finding out why they shouldn't go looking for wood down in the mines. I really don't know what they expected to happen. I genuinely didn't see it ending any other way than this. However, the biggest and best thing that happened today was the fact that I realized how stupid I was being with the town hall and finally cancelled the build and actually placed down the actual town hall block for the correct style. So we're gonna have to play catch up for a little while, but at least I caught it relatively soonish, I guess. Anyways, I spent most of the day grinding out for pretty much all of the materials I would need to get the town hall built up to the first stage at the very least, as well as crafting some of these residence blocks right here that I placed down at either side of the town hall, because now I also need to start fully planning out how I wanted things to be laid out and connected together. Day 39 followed the trend of me fixing my past stupidity and mistakes, with me finally placing some wheat seeds in the farm block thingy so that the farmer can actually get to work. I know, please, you don't have to be so kind. I know, I'm the smartest man alive. I know. Moving on, I spent a while prepping some of the blocks that were needed for the town hall, such as the bricks extra that I still don't know why they're called that, as well as gathering some sand for glass. Then, once everything was prepped, I helped out the builder in clearing out an area for the town hall. Now, I did slightly mess up having it placed 1 block too low, and I fixed that pretty soon, so if you notice that the town hall suddenly becomes 1 block higher in the coming days, it's because I had to rebuild it 1 block higher. Anyways, that evening, I did my semi-regular checkup on the other working villagers to see if they needed anything so that they could keep working before heading to bed. Now, day 40 came around, and we were still playing catch-up down to the mess that I made about the previous town hall. However, we're definitely getting there now because tier 1 of the town hall was finished and I immediately ran in there and got that bad boy upgrading to tier 2. Then went out and spent a little time gathering some cobblestone because apparently I had none of it. After getting some cobble, I handed in some more materials at the builder's hut, and whilst clearing out some of the blocks that were placed down from the previous town hall, I came up with an idea for some decorations that I could place down later to add a little bit of pizzazz to the area. In the morning, I was back in the cave searching for some lava so that I could grab some obby and finally head into the nether because I completely forgot it existed until right now. What can I say? It's been a hectic time right now and a few things are bound to slip the mind. Anyways, my ADHD brain ended up getting distracted by pretty blue glowing rocks and I completely went off course, forgetting to grab lava. And by the time I reached the surface again, the sun was going down and there was a brand new village right in front of me with a waystone in it that I didn't even know were in this mod, so it was quite the pleasant surprise. After spending the night at the village and stealing a bunch of their stuff, I eventually made my way over to a lava pool and grabbed up a bunch of obsidian. Then headed straight back home to find that the town hall upgrade had now finished and it looked beautiful. So I once again ran in and attempted to start the next upgrade, however I needed to level up the builder's hut some more before I could do it. So I checked on what I'd need to upgrade the builder's hut and, well, it didn't look too bad. However, looks can be deceiving. You see, this very item right here would once again set into action a series of hellish events. I think I can honestly say that after what happens over these following few days, that acacia wood is by far my least favorite wood, and it should be banished from the game forever. Though they should keep armadillos, though. Those are cool. I like them. Yeah, keep the armadillos, get rid of the orange wood, man. Anyways, moving on from that rant, I built up a nether portal underneath the tavern and headed in to get a pretty caca spawn just up in the air above a lava lake. However, there was a fortress nearby, so I guess that was somewhat lucky. After securing the portal, I decided to make my way over to check out the fortress, getting harassed by some brambles on the way. Now, the fortress itself didn't really have anything to note except that I found a blaze spawner almost immediately, and I also found this very yucky flesh block thing. Yeah, I don't know what this is, but I really don't like it. But after finding that, I almost died to a wither skelly before heading back home. Alright, it's time for the next series of events to begin. Starting out with a zombie pigman bursting through the portal and trying to bonk all my villagers, so I gave him a good couple slaps and sealed up the portal to prevent any further invasions. And then I decided, you know what, I've been around the settlement/colony quite a lot lately, so I decided to repair my pickaxe and head out on a little adventure in search of some acacia wood. And oh boy, was this an adventure. Now, initially things went pretty well. I took out a few sheep, I found a ruined portal with a gapple in a chest, and I even found an underwater fortress thingy that I was planning on exploring, but of course those foul, squelchy, squealy creatures of guardians were inhabiting it, so I'm going nowhere near that. Nope, it's not gonna happen. So instead of checking out that underwater structure, I decided to craft a boat to help me traverse the ocean. You know, a logical thought. But after about 10 seconds of sailing, I ended up getting absolutely battered by this swordfish riding gigachad of a drown that just kept beating me over and over and over again. And I'll be honest with you, I thought that this would be the end right here. I mean, look at this, it's ridiculous, look at this! Now, luckily, the gapples I made earlier really came in clutch here because without them, I would have been dead in the water, quite literally, multiple times. Now, I did eventually make it to solid ground and ran away from that monstrosity as fast as I could. After putting a good amount of distance between myself and the Swordfish Lord, I found another village with a waystone. So I activated it and then proceeded to steal anything and everything even remotely useful from the village. Oh, and I also got some of these pet charm things. I have no clue what they did, but I took them anyway. And then this villager screamed at me to get away, which I thought was extremely rude, so that night I burned down their house. No, it's not an overreaction. They started it and now I'm finishing it. Sorry, where was I? Oh yeah, I spent the night at the burning village and continued my journey for acacia wood in the morning, traversing literal mountains for a few pieces of orange wood. Now, I want you to notice how many villages I'm finding out here, okay? Because this is the second one and it wasn't even that far from the last, so just keep that in mind. Anyways, I also stole everything from this village. However, the guys over here were very welcoming to me, so the flint and steel didn't need to come out for this one. Oh, and I also did end up finding another abandoned colony out here, but they never have any loot in the chests, so I'll just mention this one because there's literally nothing in them and I end up finding a whole bunch of them. After spending the night in a rundown house, I placed down a waystone that I stole from the last village and teleported back to the village closest to home. Because I'd been out for a while and traveled like 2,000 blocks before realizing that the nature's compass is in this pack. So from the village, I headed back home and stored away some of the loot I'd acquired, and then crafted up the compass. And well, it told me that the nearest savanna biome was over 5,000 blocks away. Remember, this is all for literally a couple pieces of orange wood. But regardless, I needed it, so I set out on my undoubtedly long journey, crossing over even more mountains, vast fields, and reluctantly open oceans, being constantly on the lookout for the Chad from earlier. But eventually, by sunrise of whatever day this was, we had arrived at the savannah, and I even had a cake waiting for me in a little shack over here. So they must have known that this was quite the accomplishment to get here, honestly. I needed this cake. I needed some recognition for my efforts. Now, after acquiring my orange logs, I decided that the fastest way home would be to find a village, you know, because I haven't really struggled to find one up to this point, and I didn't really want to walk back the 5,000 blocks. So off I went in search of a village with a waystone, finding quite a few just random structures along the way, and even ending up in a little jungle biome that was really lucky because I also needed jungle wood for the hut upgrade as well. And now let me tell you, I was out here looking for a village for so long that I'm going to end up cutting out like the vast majority of it for you guys. But just know that I found a couple abandoned villages and colonies along the way, getting my hopes up every single time just to be shattered the moment I realized that it was indeed not what I was looking for. But eventually, deep in the night, I found a village with a waystone, and I didn't even loot this one. I just ran straight for the waystone and headed home. After eventually returning home on the morning of day 47, I sorted through all of the loot that I gathered during my traumatic adventure and then farmed out a little acacia wood before finally handing it in at the hut. Then literally spent the rest of the day just crafting up and handing in the rest of the materials needed for the hut upgrade, and also crafting a bunch of bread for if any of the workers got hungry. Oh yeah, and I also placed down the pet charm things on my dogs because it literally made one like a literal demon or something. I don't know, but he's like OP now, so they were a good find. Winter was closing in on day 48, but the work still needed to continue regardless of the cold. So first things first, I cleared out some of the riffraff around the area with the help of Binks, who just absolutely slapped these guys up. Once they were dealt with, I messed around with the placement of the restaurant block and cleared out an area for it. Then, shortly after, the builder's hut upgrade was finally done, so I went and checked that out before heading underground to stack up on some more cobblestone to use on building the restaurant. After handing that in, I crafted up and enchanted a new diamond pick and combined it with the old one to upgrade the efficiency a little bit, as well as making a very basic auto smelter to cook up a bunch of my cobble. Now, I did end up getting quite a lot of stuff done over these few days right here, such as getting the restaurant fully built and setting up the town hall to upgrade one more time, as well as doing like a whole bunch of landscaping all around the place. And I also spent a good amount of time looking at all the different paths/roads that were available for me to build, but I couldn't really decide on which one I wanted, if any. The diet was still going somewhat strong on day 52, I may have been slightly indulging myself over the past few days, but things were still looking pretty good. So I grabbed a few more veggies and headed over to the village to do some more stick trades, before heading back home to craft up some golden carrots and check up on the builder's progress. And well, he was done, so I immediately set him to work on building up another residence right next door, before then heading back into the nether to grab some quartz, for whatever reason. Now, whilst I'm writing this script, I didn't write down any notes for why I came in here to get quartz, so I have absolutely no clue why I did this. However, I did do some other stuff whilst I was in here instead of just grabbing quartz the entire time. For example, I took on a bastion. And by that, I mean I tunneled through it, terrified for my life, but still got the loot, and it was pretty decent. Sadly though, there was no netherite in there, and after looting the bastion, I just headed back home. Once I got back, I threw all of the nether loot in a chest and began supplying the builder with some more materials to work on the house. However, whilst I was doing that, he met a truly tragic end at the hands of a pillager. Would it be at the hands though? Because technically he got shot by an arrow, but like, I don't know. Anyways, I cleaned them up pretty quickly, making sure to burn the banner guide to prevent me from getting bad omen, and after they were gone, I kitted out the new builder with some maybe pre-owned equipment and immediately made him get to work. But I'm not completely heartless, okay? I did give them a hand in clearing out the floor plan of the house. I know, I'm an amazing leader/mayor thing. To be honest, I don't even know what I am at this point. Probably like a mad dictator or something. Anyways, after helping him out, I crafted another diamond sword and threw a bunch of enchants on it and then combined it with my current sword and messed around with the paths again, but this time actually decided on a design that I liked. However, I wasn't going to use the pre-built ones because it just seemed like it would take too long, but I was planning on staying somewhat faithful to the design of one. Alrighty, day 54 was pretty much spent with a bunch of trial and error on designing the paths and looking through a bunch of different light blocks to see what would fit well with the theme that we're going for here. Now, the lanterns that I decided to use were actually like extremely expensive, like they required so much iron, but I think they fit the theme perfectly, so it's worth it. Anyways, that evening I had the design down and I think it looks pretty good. It fits the theme and it's pretty cheap to build other than the lanterns. Once I was done messing around with the paths, I spent the rest of the day chopping down oak trees because the bush things that lined either side of the path needed quite a lot of logs, so I just grabbed a whole bunch. You know, you can never have too much wood. Over the following few days, winter continued, and so did the work on the colony. Starting out with me supplying the builder's hut with the materials to start working on another residence, followed by me crafting up a whole bunch of these oak hedges, and doing a bunch of work on expanding out the paths to connect to more buildings. After making some progress on that, I headed down to the nearby river and stocked up on a bunch of sand and gravel. Then, once I got back home, the builder had finished work on the second house, so I headed back over to the first one and looked at upgrading it. However, it was gonna need like a whole bunch of wool, and instead of spending who knows how long going out and getting some sheep to make a farm, I instead decided to craft a loom, an item that I can safely say I have never used in a video up to this point, and made my way over to the other village that was slightly further away and decided to trade for wool. Now, my wool master was only selling me lime green wool, but that's okay, because once I depleted all of their trades, I headed back up home and crafted some soap bars that I then used to clean the dye off the wool, making it white. So, now that I had an easy way to get wool, I decided it was time to upgrade the builder's hut one more time because it was completely stopping me from upgrading any of the residences any higher. Now, luckily for me, I already had pretty much everything I needed for the upgrade, so I handed it all in and then waited around for it to be upgraded. Then, in the morning, I decided to start upgrading the town hall again because I've put in a lot of work recently and I think I've earned an upgrade for my own home. Well, soon to be my own home. Anyways, I grabbed up all of the required stuff for the upgrade and handed it all in. Once I set my builder off to work, I headed back down into the caves in search of a whole bunch of iron because, you know, the lanterns I decided to use earlier are still very expensive. Alright, day 59. This is an exciting one. Are you ready? I set the iron I got yesterday off to smelt and built more paths pretty much all day. I know, isn't it exciting? It's just thrilling, but it needed to be done. Now, even with all the iron that I had at my disposal, it still wasn't enough to make all the lanterns that I needed to fill in all the posts I made for them. I don't understand how these things are so expensive, man. They're so expensive, and they're not even that great. They don't even light up like a massive area. They just fit the theme really well. They don't even work great as lights. They just, they don't light up areas, man. They just look good. Now, over the next few days, I decided that I really needed to start moving things around and getting the layout of the colony really honed in. So I started the process of deconstructing the tavern and then got into a prolonged fight with this creeper right here that had regen on it, so taking it down was a real pain, but I felled him nonetheless. Then to speed up the process of actually moving the tavern, I gave the builder a hand in the deconstruction of it. Oh, and I also upgraded my diamond axe at some point. I don't remember what I put on it, but it's better now. Once the tavern was gone, I immediately told the builder to rebuild it just a few blocks further forward, and then whilst he was hard at work, I began designing a kind of a town square thing. Well, I mean, it's a circle, but you know what I mean. It's kind of like the centerpiece of the colony. Now, I really didn't have a design in mind for this thing, but I think it came out looking alright. After making a start on the town square that's actually a circle, I decided to go and start tearing down the restaurant because I had a better place in mind for it. Okay, I know these were kind of build-heavy days. Well, I guess not me building, but you know what I mean. I tried to keep them pretty brief, just down to the mess up with the town hall earlier, but now I feel like we've caught up sufficiently enough to chill out a little. So on day 66, it was time. You know it, you love it, it's Storage Day! Yeah, Storage Day, the most sacred day of the 100 days tradition. It's pretty much a religion at this point, okay? Everybody loves this day. So I began moving all of my stuff from just randomly out in the open to my lovely town hall. But then, these foul, heretical, faithless creatures decided to come and ruin the sacred day. They ruined it! I hate them! Get out! I banish you from Storage Day! Begone! I swear, I become more unhinged every time this day comes around. I love it. Once the holy sacred day came to a close, I made my way back into the nether and mined down in search of some netherite. Now, I don't actually think I've gone mining for this stuff in a video in a while, but I really wanted it this time because there are like different variants of it, but we'll get to that later. I just wanted netherite for now. Anyways, after being down here for quite a while, my pick was in pretty bad shape, so I headed home and repaired it with some diamonds, and then returned to the nether, finding this hellish-themed goblin trader with some pretty decent deals. But for the minute, I just got straight back to the search. Once I'd acquired a decent amount of ancient debris, I did some quick trades with the nether goblin and headed back home. After returning from the nether with my ancient debris in hand, I had a little look through all of the different versions of netherite stuff that I could make and decided on this golderite pickaxe because it didn't cost too much and it boosted my fortune level, so I thought, why not? So I prepped everything I'd need to start crafting the required materials and headed over to the lava pool from earlier to craft up some Dragon's Breath bottles, before heading back home and crafting up and enchanting a bow before heading back to the nether in search of a ghast tear. Now, whilst I was in here, I ended up getting sidetracked by another bastion whilst looking for a ghast, but I guess the loot here was okay, I guess. And yes, I did do this one the cowardly way as well, because I really don't want any smoke with the piglin brutes. Anyways, I eventually took out some ghasts for the tier and headed back home. When I got back home in the morning, I repaired my shovel and then headed over to the village to use the blast furnace over there to smelt up some coal blocks into literal diamonds because I really wanted to repair my tools before upgrading them to netherite. Whilst the coal was cooking, I did some work on taking down the rest of the restaurant. I didn't even mean to say it like that, but hey, it worked. And once the restaurant was pretty much gone, I left my builder to do the rest and went around to the front of the town hall area and filled it with a whole bunch of dirt. Then later that day, I crafted up 2 bottles of goldrite stuff before finally upgrading everything in the smithing table. Well, by everything, I literally mean my pick, shovel, and axe. I don't know what to spend the rest of it on just yet. By the morning of day 70, the restaurant was gone. So I grabbed the blueprint block and placed down a university where it used to be and then placed the restaurant opposite it. Before then spending the rest of the day catching up with some of the villagers' needs and upgrading the forester's hut, as well as chopping down a whole bunch of trees for some wood. In the morning, I took the waystone to the village that was my guiding light all those days ago whilst I was stranded thousands of blocks away from home, and repaid the favour by stealing some of their beds to use in my own colony. However, theft was not the main reason I was out here. The actual purpose of this journey was to head down into the caves and stock up on any and all ore, because I was extremely low on anything except lapis at this point, and I thought that coming all the way out here and exploring new caves would net me more stuff. So down I went into a nearby cave, immediately taking out a creeper and grabbing some coal, copper, and zinc, because why not? I don't really see the use for them, but I'll take them. Now, once we actually started getting deeper down into the caves, I did start to prioritize iron over copper and zinc because I needed it a hell of a lot more because of, well, you know, the lanterns. Anyways, after being down here for a while, I encountered another goblin trader who generously allowed me to trade some of my ores with him to secure myself even more iron. Once my iron was secured, I grabbed a few diamonds I saw, just dotted around the place, and then got jumped by a literal army of zombies, before then finding myself in another mineshaft. However, this one was vastly different to the one near my house because, believe it or not, this one actually had some loot. Now, it wasn't really anything special, but at least it's something compared to whatever that was next to my house. After pretty much clearing out the entirety of the mineshaft, it was back to cave plundering for more gold, iron, and diamonds. And just as I was finishing up mining this lovely piece of gold right here, our old rival returned with a vengeance. The centipede demon attacked me from nowhere, hitting me with a pretty nasty poison. However, he was absolutely no match for me at this point, and I no longer feared him, so yeah, he went down pretty easy. Yeah, he'll think twice before interrupting my gold gathering. Now, generally, he wasn't hard to fight at all, really, but yeah, he looks scarier than he is. His bark's worse than his bite, but I still wouldn't have fought him all those days ago. There's no way. Anyways, after the encounter with the centipede and another army of mobs, I decided to mine up all of the iron that was kind of clumped together right next to me and called it a day for mining, heading back home. Once I was freed from the horrors of those caves, on the morning of day 74, I threw all the raw ore I'd gathered yesterday into the auto smelter before spending some time making some more improvements to my armor. Now, they weren't insane, but pretty much anything is better than what I have on at the minute. It's really not great. So, now that I was kitted out in my new armor, and by that I literally mean a new chestplate, I told the builder to get to work on building the university and made my way down to the farm with some bone meal to grab a whole bunch of carrots and potatoes because there's been a scourge, a plague you may say, of influenza tearing through my residence, and I decided that I must put a stop to it. I have absolutely no clue when this started, and especially why it started, but it's here and it's making everybody slow and grumpy, so it needs to end. Oh, by the way, I realized in the script just here that I never explained how carrots and potatoes actually stop this. But basically, I don't have a hospital, so they ask for a carrot and a potato to cure themselves. I have no clue if this has some real-world connotations, if this is the actual cure for influenza, if I could just snack down on some raw potato and raw carrot and be chilling, but either way, I'm feeding them raw vegetables, and it's probably the most nutritious meal they've had in the past month. Anyways, moving on, after making a start in curing the plague sweeping these lands, I lent a hand to the builder clearing out some space for the university. Okay, a busy few days are coming up right here, so first things first, I headed back over to the village that was slightly further away and turned one of the farmers over there into a librarian because I really needed silk touch on a pickaxe. Down to the fact that the university decided that it just needed to have one singular iron ore block for whatever reason. Apparently it's educational? Either way, after acquiring my Silk Touch book, I spent quite a while organizing and crafting up the other blocks that were needed for the build, as well as employing one of the children to be a knight for the colony. I'm sure this is gonna go swimmingly. There you go, you're on the front lines now, have fun with it. Anyway, next on the agenda was wood, and a lot of it. So I spent a good amount of time out in the nearby forests just hacking away at anything that even resembled a tree. Then, once I had a sufficient amount of wood, I headed back to my house because I remembered that I set off all that ore smelting down a few days ago and it would probably be done by now. So I grabbed a whole bunch of my newly stacked up gold ingots and broke them down into nuggets, before then crafting a ton of golden carrots, because they really do help with keeping my diet decent, even though it's a losing battle, but they keep it okay. After acquiring my carrots, I expanded out the paths around the colony even more, as well as filling in the stairs at either side of the 4 wide ones with water to help match the central circular area a little bit more. And then it was time to tear through so much of my iron just to make these god-forsaken lanterns that barely light up anything. We truly are just doing this for the aesthetics. Oh, as well, I, at some point during this time frame, made a second builder's hut and employed a new builder. That way we can get twice the work done in half the time. So while my OG builder was working on building up the university, the new one was rebuilding the restaurant. And finally now, by the end of day 78, we had both the restaurant and the university built and upgraded to tier 2. And things were really starting to come together. After the absolutely insane amount of work I did on the colony over the past few days, I decided that I deserved a little break, and crafted up a whole bunch of ender pearls as well as a waystone before upgrading the rest of my armor some more and making my way back into the nether to take out some blades for their rods. That still doesn't sound right no matter how many times I say it. It still don't sit right with me saying that, but I'm gonna keep saying it. Anyways, after acquiring said rods and another gas tier, I headed back home. And on day 80, I crafted up a wither skeleton skull using this really odd method that I've never seen before, but hey, it works, I guess. And I used it to craft myself a witherite sword. Now, I'll give you 3 guesses what this thing does. Yeah, that's right, it just adds withering to all my attacks. Now, for the rest of day 80, the footage is really sketched. I have no clue what happened. I think OBS, had a stroke or something in the middle of this day. I have no clue, but, to save your eyes, all I'll tell you is that for the rest of day 80, I literally spent most of my time in the house preparing myself for the next few days. Because on day 81, we set out in search of the stronghold that really didn't take that long. It was pretty close by, actually, and I ended up finding the portal room almost immediately. So I threw the eyes in the frame and placed down my waystone before heading back home briefly to make some more gapples. I didn't really think that I'd need them, but it's better to be safe than sorry. And then it was straight back to the stronghold and into the end. Now, as always, you know that I never miss any of my shots when it comes to this dragon fight, so this time was obviously no different. 110% accuracy. I'm just too good. Now, instead of pillaring my way up the pillars, I decided to use a water bucket this time around, and I never usually do that, but it worked out pretty well, so I might actually end up doing this in future runs. Anyway, bing bang boosh bang boom, the dragon is gone, and now we're off to the Outer End Islands in search of an elytra. And things were pretty weird this time around, because I almost immediately made a whole bunch of Endermen mad, accidentally, but they really weren't a threat because I always carry the water bucket with me, so yeah, they couldn't do anything. After dealing with the rowdy locals, I found myself a small end city with some pretty mid loot, and then this massive end fortress type thing. I have no clue what this place was, but I know one thing: the shulkers in here may very well be the second most annoying thing I have ever encountered in this game. Guardians are still number 1. I don't think really anything can top them. I hate those flappy things, man. They make my skin crawl. I hate them. Where were we? Oh, right, yeah, the fortress thing. Yeah, it was pretty annoying, but I made my way through it, and it had some decent loot in it, so I guess it was worth the annoyance of being smushed against the ceiling for nearly 4 minutes straight. Anyways, after escaping the fortress and spending a while roaming the islands, I finally found a city with a ship, so I hopped aboard, took out the crew, and stole the elytra before heading back home. After returning home on day 84, I spent a good while sorting through all the loot from the end, combining some of the better armor pieces with my own and disenchanting the iron pieces for some XP. Oh, and I also made an armor stand and just threw a full set of enchanted diamond armor on there because why not? It looks pretty good. After that, I then used some tree bark to make a bunch of paper and crafted up some Flight Duration 2 fireworks, which I finally used to see my town from the sky for the very first time. And I'm not gonna lie, I really like the front area, it's coming together real nice. The back area, there's some to be desired, but the front is all that matters. Anyway, later that day I crafted up and placed down another residence block right next to the one I already built before heading to bed. In the morning, I dealt with a lone zombie left over from last night and decided to place down a fisherman's hut so that the villagers can actually start supplying food for themselves. I think it's time they become self-sufficient. Once that was placed down, I cleared out some dirt so that the builder could get straight to work, and then I went over to the university and hired the second builder to run this place, because it took so long to build, there needs to be at least someone in here getting use from it. After setting up the university, I lent a hand to the builder to get the new residence up and running before then spending the rest of the day expanding out the path some more and adding some small walls in front of the town square area. Day 86 is another very exciting day. I spent the entirety of the day working on the paths and adding bushes and lanterns to them. That's literally it. That's all I did all day. After finishing off a bunch of the paths in the morning, I headed out to collect some cherry blossom saplings, and luckily for me, I have a world map, so I just marked them off on there and headed over to them. After chopping down a bunch of trees and stacking up on a few saplings, I headed back home and broke some bones down into bone meal, then planted down the saplings at the entrance. Well, I mean, I guess it's the entrance, it's just the front of the town square, so, you know, the entrance? It's the front area, you know where it is, you're seeing it right now. Then, once the trees were set up, I went around and placed down a load of flowers and also added some lanterns onto the stone pillar things that I made in the central area. On day 88, I threw Respiration 3 on my helmet and found a crafting recipe for phantom membranes. So I went and grabbed some coal and crafted up a bunch of them. Ah, you see, I did end up using the quartz from earlier on something. You see, the inner workings of my mind are truly an enigma. I know what I'm gonna do before I even think about doing it. In the morning, I built up another small wall around the entrance area before using the compass to find a deep, dark biome for some reason. I think I was actually looking for an ancient city to grab some loot from them, but you can't filter it in the nature's compass, so I was kind of hoping that there'd be one in this deep, dark biome, but there wasn't. There really wasn't. Either way, I decided to use my Silk Touch pickaxe to grab up a bunch of these skulky blocks and spent way too long tearing the rest of them up with a hoe because I guess I wanted all the XP from down here. I have no clue what I was doing on this day. No clue at all. Well, day 90. The end is near. I used the XP that I decided to gather yesterday to enchant some bugs, but, well, there was absolutely nothing I needed or wanted on them. So instead, I decided to fly my way back over to the Ocean Ruins dungeon thing from earlier to take it on to see if there was absolutely anything of use in there. And I mean, this place wasn't too bad, other than the literal spawns of Satan that roamed around it. It was kind of chill looting this place up. And I mean, the stuff in the chests wasn't actually that bad. There were some enchanted armor and a bunch of fish and even a diamond sword, so it was alright. Oh, and there was also like a massive whale down here that I thought was about to gobble me up in 2 seconds, but it turned out that he was a friend and actually helped me take out some of the Guardian Scourge down here. But after that, I said goodbye to my whale friend and made my way back home. And then in the morning, I decided to make a little pond area for the tadpoles that I got earlier, which reminds me that I don't think that I ever mentioned that I got them, but yeah, it was from one of the pet shop places in a village a long time ago, and they've just been chilling in a chest this entire time. So I got to work on building up a little pond for them. Now, it's nothing crazy, and I'm sure it's nowhere near the best pond I've ever built, but it'll keep them safe and they'll actually be able to swim around instead of being confined in a bucket in a chest. Now, like I said, it's not my best pond, but I think things came out looking alright, so once it was built, I placed the tadpoles in the water and crafted up a couple of name tags, and called one of them Splat and the other one Rover. Now, fun fact, I actually do own a frog IRL that's called Rover, but unfortunately I don't own one called Splat, however this is giving me an idea. On the topic of frogs, I was still in a froggy mood and wanted to craft up this frog plushie thing right here. However, it needed slime balls and I do not own any of them. So I used the compass to locate a swamp and flew over to it. And, well, look at this place. Look at this. This has to be the saddest excuse for a swamp I think I have ever seen. There literally aren't even any lily pads, let alone slimes here. So eventually, after waiting around for a while with no results of slimes, I headed back home and gave up on the plushie idea and instead went back to check up on the miner because I set him working a while ago and never picked up anything he got. And I mean, he didn't have much, but he did have a singular diamond, so that's something, I guess. Anyways, after grabbing the ores, I set them smelting and spent a while doing some more work on the paths. I feel like I've been doing these paths forever, but it needs to be done, man. They literally connect everything together. Could you imagine a world without roads? That's what this would be like if I didn't do the paths. It'd be chaos. Now, after finishing the paths off for the moment, I went and checked up on the lone survivor I met all the way back at the beginning. And, well, this guy is not a great survivor. I mean, granted he's still alive, but he's made pretty much no progress over the past 90 days. And now there won't be any progress, because I have received no tax payments, therefore he now has no home. Just watching this back, at the moment I was absolutely crying with laughter. Just look at him just staring at all that work over 90 days just gone in front of his eyes. I genuinely couldn't breathe while recording this. I laughed so much. Alright, so over the next few days I decided that the time had come to take down the Wither because I really don't think that at this point it's going to cause any problems. So I spent a good little while crafting up more player heads and then going through the process into making them skeleton heads. However, I had nowhere near enough coal to craft them into wither skulls. So I headed over to a somewhat nearby mountain range and spent the day mining up as much coal as possible. Oh, and I also found this creepy looking creeper down in a cave. I've never seen this thing before and I really don't like it. I don't want to see another one. Ugh. After mining up probably way more coal than I actually needed, I headed home and crafted up the skulls and then returned to the Nether to grab some soul sand and a whole lot of gold. Once I was stacked up on gold, I headed back home and smelted it all down to craft up a singular OP gapple, before then taking the waystone to the very distant village and mining down to set up an area to battle the Wither. Then I just spawned that bad boy in and bonked it real good. I even popped the OP gapple for funsies, but after a pretty short fight, the Wither went down and I acquired the Nether Star before heading back home and going straight back to the stronghold, because I can't build a beacon out of copper, so I need to stack up on more iron. I also just realized that in the script I never specified why I went to the stronghold for iron, but it's because when I initially went down there I saw quite a lot in the caves. There you go, it all ties together now. In the morning, I'd cooked up all of the iron that I got from the stronghold yesterday and finally set up the beacon. Now, it's only a baby beacon. I know, I'm breaking my streak of the full big ones. I don't think I've ever made this one, but I've been absolutely tearing through materials this time around, so I'll settle for the baby beacon. After placing it down, I crafted up yet another OP gapple for whatever reason, and spent the rest of the day gathering oak leaves and logs because there were still some paths that I needed to finish off. And on day 99, that's exactly what I did. I tried to get as many of the paths filled out and finished as I could with the remaining resources that I had. We're on crunch time now. And finally, day 100. I did the usual thing and watched the sunrise. However, my house was facing the complete wrong way, so you know what that means. We have to redo absolutely anything. So without any further ado, day 1 started out with me grabbing some wood and crafting up some wooden tools before immediately upgrading them to stone. Nah, I'm joking. Could you imagine if I did that though? That'd be insane. No, I just ran to the back window and watched it from there, where I noticed that I could actually see the little pillar that I made while I was fighting the bison all those days ago that almost took me down, like, immediately. Anyways, after the sun had risen, I went and fed my dogs, acquiring a new one in the process, then went around supplying all the villagers with food, because God knows they need it, as well as saying goodbye to them and my dogs. And now it's time for me to say goodbye to you. As always, thank you all so much for watching. I do really appreciate it. It means the world to me. If you did enjoy the video at any point, then please consider dropping a like and subscribing, and I will see you all in the next one. Adios.